The day I placed the ring on my wife's finger, I truly believed I had chosen the right person to build a family with. But ever since we got married, I've slowly realized that there's someone else demanding my attention, affection, and lavish gifts. My mother in law. When a heartfelt bouquet was dismissed as a cheap present and $1,000 necklace became the new standard for proving filial piety, I knew I had stepped into an unspoken battle no one had ever taught me how to fight. One day I said something that turned everything upside down. I always knew my mother in law was a cheerful, friendly woman who devoted herself wholeheartedly to her family. She could tell hundreds of funny stories that lit up every meal, and she would gladly spend an entire day helping her children and grandchildren with the smallest tasks. But alongside those admirable qualities, she also had very blurry boundaries. And I, someone newly welcomed into their family, became the central figure in her unspoken expectations. From the very early days of my marriage, I felt her presence strongly in our private married life. If I bought my wife something new, whether a commemorative ring or a simple little dress, within a few days I would receive a phone call, not from my wife, but from my mother in law. Sometimes her voice was half joking, other times gently reproachful. You love your wife so much, huh? Meanwhile, you barely remember your mother. At first, I thought she was just teasing after all. Who doesn't want a little affection from their children? But over time, that teasing turned into real pressure. Every holiday, birthday, or even on a simple, beautiful day, if a new item appeared in the house, a new sofa, set, a coffee machine, or even just a new picture frame on the wall, my mother in law would stop by and let out a loud sigh. Oh, wow. The house looks so beautiful, so well taken care of. I wonder when I'll ever be that lucky. And even though her words didn't directly demand anything, the message behind them was crystal clear. I was expected to show my appreciation to my mother in law with material gifts proportional to what I gave my wife. The pressure only grew because I came from a fairly well off family. My parents owned a factory, and I worked as an engineer. In my mother in law's eyes, my financial stability meant I had a duty to share that prosperity with her side of the family. Meanwhile, my wife's family was not wealthy. My wife had a job she truly loved, but it paid modestly. This seemed to make my mother in law feel even more entitled to demand more from me. As if trying to balance the scales, I tried to be patient. Time after time, I bought small gifts for her, tokens of appreciation to show I cared. But the more I gave in, the bigger her expectations grew. A bouquet of flowers was no longer enough. A modest gift was no longer enough. The requests became more specific: a watch, a jewelry set, and most recently, a necklace worth nearly an entire month's salary for a newly graduated engineer. It felt like a balloon inflating to its limit, just waiting for the slightest touch to burst. And that touch came with a Mother's Day gift I had chosen with all my heart, only to be deemed not enough. Facing these mounting expectations, I began to ask myself, am I building a life with my wife, or am I endlessly trying to fulfill my mother in law's insatiable expectations? I used to tell myself just be a little more patient and everything would be fine, but it turns out there are expectations that no matter how hard you try, you will never be enough. That Mother's Day, my mother in law sent me a photo via text, a sparkling, expensive necklace, along with a simple caption: I've wanted this for a long time. Can you buy it for me? I froze for a few minutes. The price of that necklace was almost the same as the savings I had just set aside for our soon to be born baby. But what made me hesitate wasn't just the cost. It was the feeling that gifts were no longer seen as voluntary expressions of love, but had become obligations. I called her, hoping to find a gentle way out, but on the other end of the line, my mother in law softly insisted, only you can afford it. You just bought your wife an expensive necklace last Sunday, but when it comes to me, you hesitate. At that moment, I realized that any refusal would be labeled as ungratefulness. If I agreed, it would set a new precedent. If I refused, it would cause a crack in an already strained relationship. So I chose a third path, one that to me felt sincere and warm. I prepared a gift with my own hands, I visited my late mother's little garden. Carefully, I selected and trimmed the flowers she had once tended to, arranging them into a vibrant bouquet. I placed them in a ceramic vase that I personally cleaned and polished. It wasn't just a gift, it was time, emotion, and a piece of my family's memory, something I wanted to offer to my mother in law, a woman I had always tried to treat with the utmost respect. That afternoon, we went to her house carrying the gift I had prepared. At first, the atmosphere was cheerful. She smiled, welcomed us warmly, just like always, but I noticed her eyes glancing around as if looking for something else. Then came the moment to present the gift. I handed her the bouquet with great care, sharing the story behind each flower, the effort and the heart I had poured into it. I hoped she would feel it. I wished at the very least for a warm smile, a heartfelt thank you. But no, she looked at the bouquet. Her eyes froze and slowly her face darkened. You think, after 32 years of being a mother, all I'm worth is a bunch of flowers picked from a garden? She said, her voice heavy and sorrowful. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. The relatives who were chatting nearby turned their heads to watch. She continued, unfiltered, my daughter isn't even a mother yet, and you gave her an expensive necklace. I'm the one who gave birth to her, raised her, and this is how I'm treated. It's heartbreaking. I stood there, stunned and disappointed. The bouquet I had lovingly prepared, hoping it would be a bridge of affection, was now twisted into proof of my lack of gratitude. I clenched my teeth, struggling to contain my emotions, but deep down, I knew there are limits that if you keep compromising, you end up losing yourself. That was the moment I realized sooner or later there would be words that needed to be said, even if I knew they would blow apart everything I had tried so hard to preserve. I stood there still holding the flower vase in my hand, weighed down by a heavy mix of embarrassment and anger. The air in the room felt thick and stifling. Around me, uneasy glances flickered, as if everyone was waiting for a drama that hadn't yet ended. My mother-in-law looked at me, her eyes red and glassy, her face etched with deep hurt, but beneath that raw emotion I could see something else too. Blame, expectation, and an unspoken demand that I should do more for her, just like I did for her daughter. Her words weren't just about disappointment over a gift. They were the culmination of months of comparisons, demands, and silent clinging to me as if I were a guarantee for all the things life had denied her. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm but firm. I'm sorry, but I need to be clear. I married my wife, not her mother. A deadly silence followed. My mother-in-law's eyes widened as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. The whole room seemed frozen in place. The clink of a spoon hitting a glass rang out harshly against the complete stillness. I continued, my voice slow but unwavering. I love and care for my wife. That's my responsibility. She is the person I chose to spend my life with. As for you, I have always respected and cherished you, but I am not obligated to treat you like my life partner, my chin. I knew every word was like a blade cutting into my mother-in-law's pride, but I also knew that if I didn't sever the cord of expectations, strangling our marriage, it would only tighten until everything suffocated. She trembled slightly, her lips pressed into a thin line. Then, without another word, she stood up abruptly and hurried inside her shoulders, shaking as if she were about to cry. For a moment, every single gaze, relatives, friends, shifted toward me. A rush of guilt, isolation, and awkwardness welled up inside. I wished I could disappear into the floor. My wife stood there frozen, her face a mixture of shock and anger. She said nothing the entire way to the car. It wasn't until the car door slammed shut that she finally turned to me. Her voice strained. Do you even know what today is? It's Mother's Day. You made my mom cry in front of everyone. I tried to explain that I hadn't meant to hurt her mother, that I was only trying to set a clear boundary to protect our marriage. But my wife shook her head, her eyes brimming with tears. "I don't agree with my mom about the gifts," she said, her voice trembling. "But you didn't have to be that harsh. You didn't have to break her heart. She just wanted to feel loved." I sat there stunned. She was right. Beneath all the demands, beneath the jealousy, maybe my mother in law was just craving recognition, a sign that she still mattered in our lives. But could that need really be fulfilled through expensive gifts, constant comparisons, and endless expectations? I sat there staring out the car window, my heart heavy. I knew from that moment on the relationship between my mother in law and me would never be the same. And maybe it would never be easy again. The entire drive back from my mother in law's house was suffocatingly heavy. My wife was no longer crying, but her eyes were still red, staring out of the window, avoiding my gaze. And me, though, I tried to appear calm on the outside. Inside, I was spiraling into questions that had no easy answers. Had I done the right thing, or had I just ignited a silent war that could never be extinguished for the rest of our lives? In the days that followed, nothing got better. My mother in law refused to answer my calls. Any messages I sent were met with cold, formal replies. And my wife, though, trying to act normal, would grow distant every time her mother was mentioned, as if an invisible wall rose higher between us. At family dinners, any topic involving my mother in law became forbidden ground. If I accidentally mentioned a dish she liked or recalled an old story between mother and daughter, my wife would fall silent and turn away as if I had just reopened a wound that had barely begun to heal. I didn't blame her. I understood she was caught between the two people she loved most, her mother and her husband. Any hint of favoritism, no matter how small, would make her feel like she was betraying the other. But that understanding only made my heart ache more. I got married to build a home, a life shared between two people. And yet now every conversation, every decision between us seemed overshadowed by the looming presence of her mother. I began to realize that this tension hadn't started with what I said that day. It had been simmering for a long time, fueled by silent expectations, tiny comparisons, invisible pressures that neither my wife nor I had ever dared to confront. Now they had surfaced undeniable and impossible to ignore. Many nights after my wife had fallen asleep, I would lie awake wrestling with it all. Should I apologize to my mother in law, even though deep down I didn't believe I was wrong? Should I give in, buy that expensive gift just to smooth things over? Or should I stand firm and protect the boundaries I had drawn, even if it meant things would get worse before they got better? But what scared me the most wasn't my mother in law's anger. It was the growing silence between my wife and me. Every time she looked at me with sad eyes, every time our conversations faltered and fell into quiet, I could feel it a crack forming between us like a hairline fracture in glass, harmless at first glance, but over time destined to spread and shatter. I don't want to lose my wife. I don't want my relationship with my mother in law to turn into a cold, endless battlefield. But I also know I can't spend a lifetime trapped under unreasonable demands and unfair comparisons. Right now, my heart is being torn between two forces. On one side, the duty to protect my love, my small family. On the other, the obligation to preserve peace with the woman who gave life to the person I cherish most. And I know if I want to save everything that matters, I need to make a choice. I need to take action before everything falls into an abyss we can never climb back out of. I knew I couldn't just let things drift any longer. The prolonged silence was only deepening the misunderstandings and allowing the wounds to quietly fester. If I truly wanted to save my family, to keep my wife by my side without losing myself in the process, I had to find another way. One that wasn't about blind submission nor bitter confrontation. And so I decided to start over with sincerity. I spent that entire afternoon writing a handwritten letter to my mother in law. I knew that if we met, face to face emotions might once again get the better of us and make things worse. But through writing, I could arrange my thoughts more completely and thoughtfully. In the letter, I didn't try to justify my actions, nor did I assign blame. I simply shared everything from my perspective as a husband, As a son in law, someone who had always tried to please both sides, but sometimes felt helpless against his own limits. I explained that the bouquet I had given wasn't out of disrespect, but because it carried a sacred memory I held of my own late mother. I apologized for hurting her on such a special day, but I also emphasized that love should not be measured by the price tag of a gift, but by the sincerity behind it. At the end of the letter, I wrote, I have always hoped that you could see love not as something that divides us through comparisons, but as something that brings us closer together in the most genuine way. I gave the letter to my wife, asking her to pass it along if she thought it was appropriate. After reading it, she stayed silent for a long time, then gently nodded. It was the first time in days that her gaze toward me felt a little less distant. A few days later, my mother-in-law called. Her voice was still tinged with coldness, but the bitterness was gone. She simply said she had read the letter and needed some time to think. I understood. True, change doesn't happen overnight, but at least a small door had been opened. As for my wife, little by little, our conversations became more natural again. We began discussing more openly the boundaries within our family and how to protect our relationship without hurting anyone. I learned that love doesn't mean unconditionally accepting every demand. Sometimes love means drawing boundaries so that both sides can respect each other. And from this experience, I discovered a precious lesson. Sometimes to hold on to the people you love. You don't have to win every argument. You just have to stay true to your heart, sincere enough to apologize when needed, strong enough to protect what's right, and patient enough to wait for wounds to heal. I don't know what the future holds between me and my mother-in-law. There may still be clashes, disagreements, but I believe that if I continue choosing sincerity, patience, and respect, at least I won't regret losing myself in the pursuit of reconciliation. And most importantly, I know I haven't lost the most precious thing, the love I have for the woman I chose and the family we are building together. There comes a time in each of our lives when we must face the delicate lines between love and boundaries, between responsibility and self-respect, between the desire to please others and the need to protect the life we've carefully built for ourselves. Sometimes love is not just about giving, but also knowing when to stop so that no one has to carry the heavy weight of unspoken expectations. Sometimes saying I'm sorry doesn't mean admitting fault, but rather choosing to preserve what matters most: respect, trust, and peace. Each of us is learning how to love not just with our hearts, but with understanding and courage. The courage to love others, and also the courage to not lose ourselves along the way. If you too are standing before gaps that seem impossible to bridge in your relationships, remember this. There is no easy road, but true love, when paired with sincerity and patience, will always find its way home. This is the end of the story. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a comment, like, share, and subscribe to our channel to support us in creating more videos. Thank you for listening. Goodbye, and see you next time.